Okay, we'll now sing the national anthem. During the silence, we will remember those who have passed on since we last gathered together. We'll now have the last pose.
They shall not grow old as we are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
They were young as we are young. They served, giving freely of themselves. To them we pledge, amid the winds of time, to carry their torch and never forget. We will remember them.
Color Sergeant, deposit colors.
Yeah. Color party, deposit colors. Color party, outwards turn. Color party, quit, march.
Please be seated. Welcome to honoring our local veterans here at Royal Canadian Legion Branch 6. We're on the traditional grounds of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, comprising the Chippewas of Nawash and the Saugeen First Nation, the people who are first. My name is Gloria Haybart, and I'm chair of the Billy Bishop Museum. Of all the things we do throughout the year, I'm most proud of this one. Each year, we specifically honor some of those men and women with ties to Grey Bruce who have served in the Canadian Navy, Army, Air Force, and the Merchant Marine, or who may have done their duty in the services of other allied nations, but ended up making this area their home. So thanks to the 9 that we are recognizing today. But to me, it's also an afternoon to acknowledge the service of all the men and women who took up the job of defending freedom around the world, to helping where needed. Those who served in the past, those who are serving now. It's a little personal for me. I kind of like to remember my granddad, who served in the British Army. He was in the Great War, and he was wounded a couple of times. He was going to make a career in the Army, I think, but he came to Canada. So I also remember my dad, who was in the Royal Canadian Medical Corps, and my Uncle Bob, who was in the Royal Navy, and what they must have gone through as well. They never talked very much about it, but they served as well. And my mom, who was in the fire service in London during the Blitz. I can't even imagine that, all of that. So in the 2 great wars, Korea, the Cold War, the often deadly peacekeeping missions, Afghanistan, everywhere else there was a need, Canadians played a role. They just went and did a job. And that's what my buds over there tell me. They just did their job. They still do. So we honor everybody today. I'm sure you've all got somebody you could remember that you would like to honor. Those who have served, those who are serving now. Those who came back, sometimes wounded in body, mind, and soul. And we remember those who didn't return. And we also honor and remember the families who, to me, maybe had the worst job of all, waiting to see what was going to happen. So miigwech, merci, and thank you to everyone. Now, Bruce Grey Owen Sound MP Alex Ruff has a few words to say. Alex?
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you to the Billy Bishop Museum for hosting this and for recognizing our local veterans annually. Because that's the key message. We can't forget. We have to remember. Every year, something changes, something happens. We lose so many of the veterans, and not just the veterans, the family members. Locally here, 2 people that have just passed recently. I had the privilege of being here at the Owen Sound Legion, which always does such a great job of hosting these events. But for the Celebration of Life service for Don McIsaac, another veteran that we lost, I believe Don was 90 earlier this year, and I had the pleasure of serving with his son, General Dan McIsaac. And it was great to see Dan, but just to see the impact that people have, our veterans have, not when they're just in uniform, but in our communities after they're done service. And it's just not our veterans either, it's those family members and the people that our Canadian Armed Forces members have helped make a difference. We lost John Verdunk just recently out of Tara, who did a lot post the Second World War in just getting the message out of the importance that the sacrifices our soldiers, sailors, and aircrew make. Because John was a young boy during the Second World War in the Netherlands and was liberated by Canadians. And it just shows the impact that it has on making a difference. I look at some of the veterans that we have here and their family members, and you know, there's a way I can draw some connections to every one of them. It's always good to see, I guess it's Lieutenant Colonel James Gale from RMC, you know, my alma mater, and it's just to show how the impact and how the reach gets out here. We have a couple Korean War vets represented today, and this is the 70th anniversary of the armistice of the Korean War. And just on Friday, I had the pleasure to be at a hockey match in Ottawa, which celebrated the 70th anniversary of the Imjin Classic. The PPCLI and the Van Dues, Canadians being Canadians, had hockey gear sent over during the Korean War and played over a couple winters of the Korean War a hockey game on the Imjin River as a bit of camaraderie. And that sort of celebration and remembrance has restarted about 10 years ago in 2013 on the 60th anniversary, and is still going today. Now, for any of the PPCLI fans in the crowd, unfortunately for them, I think the Van Dues have been doing a pretty good job of continuing to win that the majority of the time. But it was just great to see the Korean Embassy take a lead role, senators, parliamentarians take a key role in helping recognize veterans that make a difference, what the Korean War did. And I'll just sort of conclude my remarks in saying this isn't done. The world's a complicated place. You just have to look at the news and what's going on in the Middle East, Ukraine, the South China Sea. And I don't want to be pessimistic, but there's a lot going on. And Canada right now, just even this past weekend, is readying soldiers, sailors, and aircrew to help prepare in case of a necessary non-combatant evacuation operation out of the Middle East. So we have people every day, and it's just not them, but it's their families that are making a difference in trying to make the world a safer place. And my personal thanks to all those here represented today for everything that you have done and that your family members have done, lest we forget.
Thank you, Alex. Now I turn things over to my second in command, Dave Alexander, who's also chair of our Veterans Committee. Dave, you're on.
Veterans, viewers, friends, welcome to this year's Honoring Our Local Veterans. We are pleased to be at Branch 6 Royal Canadian Legion for this event and having it televised on Rogers TV. This is the 23rd edition of this program, in which we have honored over 200 local veterans from Bruce and Grey counties. On this occasion, we have marked the 80th anniversary of Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily, the invasion of mainland Italy, and the Battle of Ortona. In fact, one of our posthumous recognitions today will include Private Alan Cameron, who was killed in action in Sicily. He and nursing sister Luella Denton will be the subject of this year's They Serve For Us memorial markers, which will soon be erected in Jervis Bay Memorial Park. 2023, as Alex just mentioned, also represents the 70th anniversary of the Korean Armistice Agreement, which resulted in a cessation of hostilities of the Korean War, and the 30th anniversary of the Battle of Medak Pocket. Fittingly, we are honoring 2 Korea war vets today. Veterans and friends, it's a great privilege to introduce this year's participants of honoring our local veterans. There is no doubt that this group of veterans we will recognize today have contributed much to make this a great country. They are a diverse group, having served with different branches of the armed forces in distant locales around the world. They left their civilian lives and loved ones behind to embark upon an uncertain journey from which they were not assured they would return. One thing they do have in common is a commitment and a desire to serve their country. This theme will become very evident as we introduce each of our honorees today. Sergeant Terry Bates almost joined the Navy, but opted for Army enlistment in the Canadian Armed Forces in November 1978. He completed his recruitment training at Cornwallis and then was posted to the Canadian Forces School of Communications and Electronics. While posted to No. 1 Canadian Signal Regiment, Sergeant Bates qualified for radio operator trade levels 3, 4, and 5. In 1984, he was attached to NATO headquarters, Allied Forces Central, in Bransum, the Netherlands, as a technical controller. Sergeant Bates returned to Canada to take up signal positions with the 2nd Regiment, Royal Canadian Horse Artillery, and completed the Combat Leaders Course. He returned to the Canadian Forces School of Communications and Electronics as an instructor. Subsequently, Sergeant Bates was attached to No. 2 Canadian Mechanized Brigade Group headquarters and the 700 Communication Squadron, CFB Borden, to supply communication resources. He finished his 33-year career in the military at Land Force Central Training Area Center as communications supervisor. Terry said, "I was always posted to the right places that fit well with my career. In advance, I would seek out advice about the unit I was being transferred to and found ways to fit in. I always pushed myself to do a good job." Could we please have a round of applause for Sergeant Bates? Private Alvin Cameron enlisted for military service at Owen Sound on August 31st, 1942. He completed initial training at Toronto and base Borden before being deployed overseas to the United Kingdom in March 1943. Private Cameron was designated as a reinforcement for the Royal Canadian Regiment, being attached to No. 3 Canadian Infantry Enforcement Unit. On May 21st, 1943, Private Cameron was taken on strength by the RCR as part of the 1st Canadian Infantry Brigade attached to 1st Canadian Infantry Division that was chosen by military leadership to participate in Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily. The RCR landed in Sicily on July 10th, 1943. Tragically, 11 days later, on the 21st, Private Alvin Cameron was killed in action. On 21st of July, 1943, the commanding officer of the RCRs had ordered a fighting patrol of the strength of a platoon composed of volunteers from B Company to probe the high ground between Leonforte and Acero and determine if the enemy was holding it in any strength. Private Cameron, who had been chosen for this patrol, took the lead and drew enemy fire, falling to the ground as he had been fatally wounded. One of his senior officers of the RCR, Captain Strom Galloway, witnessed this heroic action. Private Alvin Cameron was eventually interred at Agira Canadian War Cemetery, Sicily. Alvin's family had written numerous letters to him as he had been serving overseas during the Second World War. After his death, an unopened letter was returned to the family being stamped deceased. To this day, the family has never opened the letter. Today, Alvin's great-great-niece, Laura Karstaden, is representing him at this ceremony. Could we please recognize Private Cameron with a moment of silence? Is Amelia Dunham somewhere here? Yes. Amelia, we would welcome you to come sit up here, please, in this chair that's empty. Thank you. Leading Seaman William Cutting, enlisted for his service at His Majesty's Canadian ship York of the Royal Canadian Navy in Toronto. He was sent out west to Vancouver Island to complete his basic training aboard HMCS Naden in Ontario. Leading Seaman Cutting was then stationed at HCMS Stadacona in Halifax, where he qualified as a radar plotter and operator. His first posting was aboard the aircraft carrier HMCS Magnificent, which embarked on a 3-month cruise to visit friendly European ports of call. Leading Seaman Cutting was transferred to the destroyer HMCS Crescent for one voyage overseas before being deployed on the HMCS Nootka, which was headed for Korea in December of 1951. The Nootka left Halifax and sailed through the Panama Canal, making a stop at San Diego, California, where a fresh coat of paint was applied to her and on to Pearl Harbor for 2 weeks of training. HMCS Nootka patrolled the waters off of eastern coast of Korea, firing at targets along the coastline such as railway supply lines. After 10 months of duty in Korea, the Nootka returned to Canada. Leading Seaman Cutting finished his service aboard HMCS Portage and was discharged in January 1954. Reflecting upon his service time, Bill said, "Everything was exciting to me. I just enjoyed everything. There were so many guys that were homesick. I could understand that, but maybe they had girlfriends. I was always looking forward to what we would be doing the next day. You learn discipline being in the Navy. It made a man out of you. You learn to accept your responsibilities." Could we please have a round of applause for Leading Seaman Cutting? Lieutenant Luella Denton, enlisted for military service on February 3rd, 1916 in Toronto. When she arrived in the United Kingdom, Lieutenant Denton was attached to the Ontario Military Hospital at Orpington. 11 months later, she made her way to France in Belgium, where she served with several Canadian Army Medical Corps units, including number 16 Canadian General Hospital, number 1 Canadian General Hospital, number 8 Canadian Casualty Clearing Station, number 8 Canadian General Hospital, the Nursing Sisters Home in Abbeville, and number 45 Casualty Clearing Station, and the CAMC Casualty Company. Lieutenant Denton was present at number 1 Canadian General Hospital in Étape, France, when it was severely bombed by the Germans, but managed to escape injury even though several of her colleagues were killed. Lieutenant Denton returned to Canada in 1919 and was demobilized on January 9th, 1920. Nursing Sister Denton penned a series of letters that captured her experience with war and wounded soldiers. Quote, "The guns have kept a terrible roar all night. The earth shakes with the explosions. All day, yesterday, it was the same. The fighting is stiff, and our boys are doing splendidly. Flanders fields are seeing terrible things, and we, all of us, are sick, nauseated with the horrible sights. I love my work, the opportunity which I have here. To me, it is a sacred place. Men every day giving their lives here. Oh, it is cruel. We who have seen will never forget. You who have not seen, be thankful." In another letter, she wrote, quote, "Can you picture me now? 2:50 a.m., a long, low tent, rows of beds down each side, black low cots with brown blankets. In the center is a small coal stove and a table where I'm writing. A screen separates me from the ward. The orderly at the opposite side of the stove is asleep in his chair." The source for the above quotations was Grey Roots Museum and Archives, a Canadian nursing sister. Today, Luella's great-nephew, Hugh Johnson, who has come from British Columbia to be with us, is representing her at this ceremony. Could we please recognize Lieutenant Denton with a moment of silence? Private John Desjardins, enlisted with the Perth Regiment, on October 6, 1939. During the Second World War, the Perth Regiment did extensive recruiting in Bruce County and placed these new recruits in B Company. The Perth Regiment trained for 2 years in Canada before embarking for the United Kingdom in October 1941. It was determined that the Perth Regiment would be attached to the 11th Infantry Brigade as part of 5th Armored Division. Private Desjardins served with the Perth Regiment during this time as a cook. As fate would have it, Private Desjardins was diagnosed with rheumatic fever and returned to Canada. He was discharged on October 9, 1942. Given that John was with the Perths for roughly a year in the United Kingdom, he would have experienced the endless training schemes that they were put through to prepare them for battle. The Perth Regiment would see its first action early 1944 in Italy. They fought valiantly during the Italian campaign, helping to breach the Gothic line before they relocated to the Netherlands with the 5th Armored Division in early 1945. John would have lost many close comrades during these battles. Today, John's daughter, Amelia Dunham, is representing him at this ceremony. Could we please recognize Private Desjardins with a moment of silence? Thank you. Lieutenant Colonel James Gale signed up for military service in 1963 at the Canadian Forces Recruiting Center in Hamilton with the intent to be a fighter pilot. Lieutenant Colonel Gale completed pilot training at Base Borden in Gimli, Manitoba, after which he became an instructor on T-33 jets. He subsequently transferred overseas to RCAF 441 Squadron, CFB Baden-Solingen, Germany, as a pilot and flight commander flying CF-104s. Lieutenant Colonel Gale returned to Canada, becoming the executive assistant to the Air Force Deputy Commander. He subsequently completed tactical helicopter training and was appointed Deputy Commander of 427 Squadron. In 1984-85, Lieutenant Colonel Gale was a military observer with the United Nations Truce Supervisory Organization in Israel, Lebanon, and Syria, and later served as Director of Air Operations for the multinational peacekeeping force in Egypt in 1989. Lieutenant Colonel Gale has had a long affiliation with the Canadian Forces Command and Staff College, becoming its Chief of Staff in 1991. He was also Deputy Wing Commander of the Tactical Helicopter Wing at CFB Downsview. In 2000, after an accomplished career, he retired from the military. James spoke of the CF-104 starfighter's preferred tactic to evade hostile Russian fighters if necessary. We did a bit of air-to-air fighter pilot stuff, but the problem is the 104 was never intended to be a fighter because the wings were so small it could not maneuver well. So our best defense as a 104 pilot, if a Russian fighter was coming after you, was don't try to fight them, just light the afterburner and go as close as you can to the deck, and away you go. James offered these sage thoughts regarding leadership. Quote, leadership is about so much more than just giving orders. Good leaders must be able to provide clear, logical direction to all personnel within their chain of command while motivating and inspiring each one of them in order that they fully understand and appreciate the important role that they play as valued members of your team. Could we please offer a round of applause for Lieutenant Colonel Gale? Next one. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Since he was too young to join the Royal Canadian Navy, Boatswain John Garvey enlisted for service with the Merchant Navy in Halifax in 1940. He boarded a ship headed to the Caribbean. It was not hard to find a spot on a Merchant Navy vessel, as they were always looking for crew members. There were 40 guys on a ship with many different nationalities. If the captain and food were good, then everything was pretty swell. If not, find another ship. Boatswain Garvey also served as an ordinary seaman and fireman. He sailed to North Africa and the Mediterranean Sea in the United Kingdom. He was wounded in the leg when the ship he was aboard was struck by a German bomb. The cargo aboard these ships ranged from, as he said, rubbers to bombs, anything required for the war effort. His favorite ship was the Dufferin Park. It was the newest, handled rough weather well, and would go like hell. John tells a story of being on a streetcar during the war and people looking at him because he was not in uniform. One individual asked him why he was not in the army. John flippantly answered, because my dad is rich. On another occasion, John had been called up to the draft and reported to Wolseley Barracks in London. The recruiting sergeant abruptly asked why a man at age 21 like him was not already in the army. His response, I don't need to. The furious sergeant and the individual on the streetcar failed to notice the Merchant Navy pin John was wearing on his lapel. As the doctor at Wolseley Barracks noted, you've already done your bit. Could we please have a round of applause for Bosun Gari? As Sergeant Leonard Smith put it, he was looking for a job and heard the Canadian Armed Forces were looking for recruits to go to Korea. So he enlisted for service in 1952 in Digby, Nova Scotia. His other brothers had served in the military, including Fred, who was also sent to Korea. Sergeant Smith completed his basic training at Base Borden and subsequently moved to Shiloh, Manitoba to train with parachutes as other troops and part of the Royal Canadian Army Service Corps into combat zones. He was in Korea for 2 years, providing rations, ammunition, and care for frontline troops. In 1954, Sergeant Smith returned to Canada, where he taught basic military skills to cadets and designed uniforms for the CAF and provided medical care at outposts such as Churchill, Manitoba, using snowmobiles to transport ailing patients to the hospital. After 9 years of service, he was discharged in 1961. Leonard recalled an image from Korea that stayed with him to this day. Marching up to the front lines, we went through a village that had come under recent attack. We came across a lifeless young boy who was leaning against a tree. It was a shame young kids had to suffer. Growing up in a small village in Canada, I had never been shot at until I entered a war zone in Korea. I learned to be a man, accepting my responsibility of being a soldier. Could we please offer a round of applause for Sergeant Smith? I'll tell you one thing, we have some real characters here today. We get a chance to talk to them, and I hope you do afterwards too. Sergeant Wallace Sprung enlisted for military service at Owen Sound on September 22, 1942. He completed his basic training in Newmarket and was transferred to Base Borden with the Canadian Armored Corps, where he qualified as a driver and dispatch rider. Sergeant Sprung requested a transfer to the 26th Army Tank Regiment, the Grey and Simcoe Foresters, in April 1943. In July 1943, the unit was disbanded, and he was transferred to holding units of the Canadian Armored Corps. Sergeant Sprung was attached to the Allied armies in Italy, and in March 1945 transferred to the Netherlands with 1st Canadian Corps. This included service with the Ontario Regiment. After the Second World War, Sergeant Sprung returned home and continued his military service with the 13th Medical Company of the Royal Canadian Army Medical Corps. After the 26th Army Tank Regiment was disbanded in July 1943, Wallace was transferred to a Canadian Armored Corps reinforcement unit. He left the United Kingdom to join the 1st Canadian Corps in Italy. He would have witnessed fighting in the Leary Valley, the breaching of the Gothic Line, and the Rivers Campaign in northeast Italy. During his time, Wallace suffered injuries from an explosion which caused damage to his face and sinuses. His face was partially rebuilt, and he required periodic surgery for the rest of his life. In March 1945, 1st Canadian Corps joined 1st Canadian Army in Northwest Europe and was given the task of liberating the Netherlands. Wallace and Betty traveled to the Netherlands for the 45th anniversary of the liberation and were billeted by a Dutch family in the village of Lettel. They became very good friends and communicated many times over the years. They traveled with a Legion contingent for the 50th anniversary of the liberation, and Wallace was very proud to participate in the Apeldoorn Parade. Subsequently, they returned for the 55th anniversary and hosted the Dutch family during a visit to Canada. Today, Wallace's son, Richard, is representing him at this ceremony. Could we please recognize Sergeant Sprung with a moment of silence? Thank you. Even though the Billy Bishop Museum documents and perpetuates the memory of Air Marshal William Avery Bishop, it is also part of our mandate to honor the service and sacrifice of all past serving members of the Canadian Armed Forces, including these veterans today. By extension, we also honor the service and sacrifice of current serving members of the Canadian Armed Forces. It is of particular interest to note this group of veterans in front of us today has been awarded more than 30 medals, and this does not account for any other honors that may have been bestowed upon them. Thank you to Emily Joliffe for her help with this program over the past 5 years. Emily has moved on with the Ken Selling Museum, and we wish her well. I spoke to her yesterday. She was originally going to come, but she has a lot going on in her life right now, so she couldn't be with us. But let me introduce Morgan Woodhouse, our new curator at the Billy Bishop Museum, who ably assisted us today. And we welcome Morgan, and we look forward to her helping us with this program in the future. Thank you to Kirk Scott for, well, the accompanying video didn't come today, but who has served on the Veterans Committee for many years. Thank you to the other members of the Veterans Committee for your organizational efforts. Thank you to Branch 6 Royal Canadian Legion for hosting us. Thank you to Mark Perry and his crew from Rogers for televising the event. Thank you to Levan Living, Kelso Villa, and Veterans Affairs Canada for sponsoring HOLV. Thank you to our veterans' families for supporting them in this endeavor. Thank you to our veterans for your service to Canada, participating in this event, and especially for sharing your stories with us. Their plaques will be on display in our community at the Harry Lumley Bayshore Community Center, Heritage Place Mall, and MP Alex Russ Owen Sound office. Finally, thank you, the viewers, for watching this special broadcast today. At this time, I would like to call upon President Ed Yates of Branch 6 Royal Canadian Legion to say a few words.
Good afternoon, veterans, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. On behalf of Branch 6, it is our honor to host this event. It has been a wonderful afternoon. Thank you everyone for attending. And all I would like to say to all veterans, those being honored today, and all the veterans in this room, thank you for your service.
Okay, thank you very much for Dave, Morgan, Wayne, and Ed. It's always amazing to see hear the stories from these people. So make sure you stay around at the end to talk with people. Now, excuse me, I have a few people who would like to say a few words. Bruce Gray, Owen Sound MPP, Rick Byers.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's terrific to be here with you today, and what a special time of year it is. It makes us think about the service and sacrifice of so many years ago, and I think thank you so much to the Billy Bishop Museum for this year's event, and what a special honor it is to be here with our Grey Bruce veterans and hear their stories and see them and their representatives of the family. It makes it all the more important for us all. It makes it real, the sacrifice of the members of our community for our community. So thank you all very much for your great service, and great to be here with you this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And now Grey County Warden Brian Milne.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the Billy Bishop Veterans Committee for inviting me to be part of today's event. I'm proud to be here on behalf of Grey County Council to help honor our local veterans. Local citizens who joined the military service have participated bravely in conflicts around the world. They placed the freedom, peace, and well-being of our country ahead of themselves, some making the ultimate sacrifice. I think of my great uncle, William Millen, who I actually farm on the farm that he was raised on. He went out west a couple of years before the first war started. And then when the war started, he signed up, went overseas, and he's still over there in an English grave. His mother, my grandmother, never saw him again. It's just one of many stories that are very similar. Our veterans, past and present, their families, and their descendants deserve our respect and gratitude for the sacrifices they've made for Canada. Thank you to the Billy Bishop Veterans Committee for organizing today's events, thus ensuring we continue to tell these stories and recognize those who gave so much in service of our country. On behalf of Grey County, I extend my sincere thanks to all our honored veterans here today from Grey County and indeed from across our country. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifices. Thank you, Miigwech. We will remember them.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. And now, Owen Sound Mayor Ian Boddy.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's always a pleasure to come to this event annually and be able to recognize the veterans. I'm joined, I think, today by Deputy Mayor Gregg and Councillor Koepke, I think I saw here. You know, one of the City of Owen Sound's core values is a caring community, and this event really shows us as a caring community and really what brought us together. We all have pride in our Canadian heritage and our history and our long national history of caring about our country and caring about others around the world and taking that Canadian lifestyle, that Canadian, the way we live and wanting to share it with others around the world. So we congratulate those who are honored today here and those who aren't here with us today but have provided service in representing our country and representing our city, representing our area around the world, and say thank you for the freedoms that we all enjoy and some of those freedoms we have been able to share. Thanks to the Billy Bishop Museum, the Legion, and everyone involved today that brings this together every year, and thank you to the veterans for everything that they have done for us. Thanks.
Thank you, Ian. And now, Honorary Colonel Al Jones of the Grey and Simcoe Foresters.
I want to start by thanking you, the community. For all these veterans that are here, it is the families and it is the community that supports them to do the outstanding work that they do here and abroad. Strength of family that provides that ongoing support when they come home. As the Honorary Colonel of the Grey and Simcoe Foresters, these veterans up here certainly demonstrate our model. Tenacious and versatile. When I hear the stories of all the people that are sitting up here today, I can't help but think of how tenacious they were in all the things they did, whether it's on a streetcar or in a subway and really, you know, showing that spirit, and versatile, being able to be in an armored division and switch to another division while serving this country. I am the 7th generation Canadian. We are very proud of all of the things that we offer here in Canada and all the work that our veterans have done to create the freedoms that we have. A sense of gratitude. I have a quote that I want to share with you, and I think it really resonates today and tomorrow. Gratitude makes sense of our past. It brings peace for today. And it creates a vision for tomorrow. We cannot forget the work that was done and the gratitude that was done in the past, and to continue that forward to create great futures. On behalf of the Gray and Simcoe Foresters, I want to thank you for having us here, and I want to thank the veterans for all the work that you've done for creating the communities that we have and the Canada that we live in today. Thank you.
Okay. Now, is Rhonda here? Rhonda Laws, representing, there she is. Rhonda's representing Kelsovilla and Levant, I'm sorry. Yes, Levante Living, one of our sponsors.
Good afternoon, everyone. Veterans, thank you. Thank you for all that you do. It's really hard to be the person in this role following all of these incredible speeches that you've heard from the diligence above me and such. And I get to a point that all I can do is just speak from my heart. So, first of all, having family that have served, looking back into the history that has been instilled into me, the freedoms that I have, the fact that I could pursue an education, I could become anything and everything that I am. It's all because of the men and women who served to give us the freedoms that we have today. You know, I have an uncle who did Korean War. I have a son-in-law who did tour in Afghanistan, came back with shrapnel, had to call his mom and said, "Mom, this could be it." And having my mother-in-law standing there going, when will I see him? How will I see him? And he returned home with shrapnel, recovered from it, survived it, and went back and served again. You know, and to this day now, he is married to my beautiful daughter, has gifted us with 2 beautiful granddaughters, and to see his struggles, to see the PTSD that comes out and how he needs to reach out to his brotherhoods to lift them up and lift each other up. It's incredible the strength that it takes for those who have served and for the family members who have always stood there beside them to lift them up, to get them out of those darkest moments. So if you are a family member of somebody who served, you are serving as well, and I thank you. I stand here before you representing Kelsovilla and Levante Living. Over there, I have got the great honor of sitting down and talking to many people who have served. Yes, last year we honored Elwood Moore. Yeah, I was trying to make sure that was the last name. Elwood Moore, unfortunately, he passed away before he could be sitting here receiving his plaque. And we had Joan Cracknell. She just celebrated her 100th birthday. And I'm telling you, the conversations that I have with her are the most beautiful and heartfelt. And she survives every day with a smile on her face and a song in her heart. If I was to be inspired by anyone, I'm telling you, she is the woman to be. She went off and quit her job at the bank, walked in and enlisted, went home and told her dad, "Dad, Mom, I enlisted in the military." And her dad said, "You go right back there and tell them right now that you aren't coming." And she said, no, this is what I want to do. And she proceeded to go on, Morse code operator. She has got the most amazing outlook on life, and to this day will never speak of the darkness of what she's seen and had served. We have John Garvey up here, who is also another resident of Kelsovilla. And to have him honored here as well is very heartful. So again, when we look at our elder walking down the street, don't just think of them as a senior citizen. They're survivors, and they have a story as well. So again, anyone who is a family member of someone who has served, you are serving as well, and thank you all for your service.
Thank you, Rhonda. Very well said. She's right. It's family members as well as the people that serve. Now, Before we conclude today's ceremony, I'd just like to mention a few things. We've got some veteran surveys here, I believe, and tree of remembrance forms. And I want to let you know that the museum's going to be decorated for Christmas again this year, beginning in late November. And we've got Christmas teas, December 9, 12, and 14. And I also want to mention that if you want to book a private tea or have a small event at the museum, just give us a call. And ladies, next year's Fire and Ice fundraising gala will be on May 4th, 2024. Visit our museum for details on all of these events. And you can read about veterans, the ones we have honored in the past and the ones we have honored today. They'll be all up on the website. And please, come to visit the museum. We've got the history of Billy Bishop, but we've got a lot, much more than that. We have something now called Mrs. Eaton's War, which is on loan from Grey Roots. It's about an Owen Sound woman who went to London, England, during the Great War to bring a bit of a home for the boys from Grey who were serving there. And Ground Truth, which is about the war in Afghanistan. Two great exhibits. And I'd like to thank you, the Legion Auxiliary here today, who's providing some refreshments. So please, don't run off after the ceremony concludes. Stay and chat with our veterans, listen to some stories, and enjoy the refreshments. Now, Color Sergeant, prepare to march off colors. Oh, please rise first.